artist, so we're going to be doing most of our art lessons at home for a while, so I want to make sure that you're set up correctly. This is our first sort of art lesson. Make sure that you have a nice place to work. This can be the dining room table, it could be the counter in your kitchen, it could be a desk in your room. You just need to have a nice flat surface to sit, a nice comfortable seat, and you need to have a couple of tools. You definitely need something to draw with. So Sharpies, pencils will work just fine, ballpoint pens, and then you need also something to draw on. So I have this pad of paper I might use. I just grabbed a bunch of copy paper out of my printer, and I have my sketchbook as well. So any of these will work. If you have a sketchbook, please do all of your sketching in your sketchbook. If you just have paper like this, that's totally fine too, but I would suggest stapling them together or somehow putting them in a folder so that you have all of your drawings with you. You might also need to have a nice cup of coffee, like I do. So what is drawing anyway? Most of us know it when we see it, and most of you might say, oh, it's just when you take a pencil and you draw something on a piece of paper, right? And that's the way most of us draw, but drawing is really just the act of using any tool that makes a mark and then making marks on a surface. So there's a variety of surfaces up here. I have butcher paper, wood, cardstock, cardboard, regular bond paper, and a whiteboard. All of these are different surfaces, flat surfaces for me to put marks on. So, and I also have a variety of tools to do that. I have whiteboard markers, I have pastels and chalks, I have a Sharpie, I have colored pencils, I have regular markers, and I have a regular pencil. And so I can make marks on these surfaces using all of these tools. For example, I can use the chalk to draw on black cardstock. I can use my whiteboard marker to make marks on the whiteboard. I can use the Sharpie to draw on my butcher paper. I'm gonna draw a nice flower. And I'll use this marker to draw on my cardboard. And I'll use an oil pastel to draw on the wood. So those are all tools, different types of tools to make marks on different surfaces. So hey, first and second graders, we're gonna do a little bit of drawing today. It's kind of an exercise and a little practice. Since this is our very first day, just make sure that you have your materials. And we're gonna draw mostly with a Sharpie today. You're more than welcome to use a pencil if you feel not very confident in your drawing. But I would like you to get a little bit more confident by using a Sharpie. That way you can't erase anything and you have to start really thinking about the lines that you're drawing. So I'm gonna do all my drawings in Sharpie, but again, you are more than allowed to use pencil if you would like. And remember, when you use a Sharpie, you take the cap off, you stick it on the end, that way you don't lose it, and you hold it like a pencil and not with your whole hand like this. All right. Let's start by talking about how to make lines. So in drawing, there are lots of different types of lines. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the types of lines. Now the first type of line is pretty easy. We're just going to start on one side of our paper and draw all the way across as straight as we can. And that is called a straight line. Connects one point to another point. Now the next type of line we're going to do is a curvy line. So starting at one side of your paper, go ahead and go up, down, around, all the way to the other side. And that's called a curvy line. Now the next kind of line is all straight lines that change direction. So something like this. Draw straight, change direction, straight, change direction, straight, direction. And as long as you are making straight lines, you are creating something called a broken line. It almost looks like you took a line and then smashed it against the ground and it broke. Now, if you take both of those together and combine them, you get something called a mixed line. And that's when you do a straight line, and then maybe a curvy line, and then back to a straight line, and maybe another straight line, and then a curvy line. Whatever you want to do, as long as you're mixing those two kinds of lines together, you're getting something called a mixed line. Another kind of line that I like to do a lot is something called a sketchy line. Now, a sketchy line is when you move your pen back and forth in different ways, but you keep moving in one direction. This is the way a lot of people draw, is when they sketch, they go back and forth with their pencil, creating sort of this fuzzy line, and that's called a sketchy line. The next type of line we're going to look at is something called an implied line. An implied line is kind of hard to understand. What an implied line is not an actual line, but a line that's only in your brain. So if I was to put a line of dots in a row, those dots are not actually a line. Those dots are in a line. Your brain is so amazing that it connects all of those dots in your head and creates a line inside of your brain. But you don't have to just use dots. You could also use dashes. You could use shapes like triangles. You could use X's. As long as they go together in a line or create a pattern, you have something called an implied line. Implied lines you guys use a lot at school. Whenever you stand in a line with your friends, when you're about to go out to recess, you guys aren't supposed to be touching each other. So you are definitely an implied line. You're a group of things in a row that create a line in your brain. Now, the last kind of line we're going to look at is probably the most difficult to understand, and that's called parallel lines. Parallel lines are lines that match each other, but they never ever touch. So if I was to draw a line like this, I could also draw one right below it exactly the same way, just like a twin, and they're never going to touch. If I drew a line like this, I would draw a twin of that next to it, and those lines are never going to touch. If I draw a rainbow line, I could put another rainbow underneath it to match it, but they do not touch. Notice there's always space between parallel lines. And you can have more than 2 parallel lines. You could have 3, 4, 5 parallel lines, but parallel lines become very important later on as we draw to make things look real. So go ahead and practice putting 2 lines next to each other and make them copies of each other, but don't touch. And that's called parallel lines. All right, now we're gonna do an actual drawing using all of these different kinds of lines that we just practiced. And this one's called Crazy Hair Day. And a lot of you guys really like this one a lot. We need to start with drawing a person's head. And we wanna do that right down here at the bottom of our paper, because we're gonna need all of this space to create the hair for our Crazy Hair Day. So let's draw a small person's head down here. I'm gonna start by doing a big U. At the top of that U, I'm gonna put 2 ears. I'm gonna put some eyes. So I'm gonna make 2 circles and then 2 black dots inside of them. And I always like to leave a little bit of white on my eyes just so it looks like it's shiny. Eyebrows, of course. Let's give him a nose. I'm gonna do just a U shape for a nose today. And I'm gonna make him sad because he's having a bad hair day. But you could be smiling. Maybe you like having bad or crazy hair, so maybe your person's happy. That's totally fine. Let's give this person a neck. So 2 parallel lines and then 2 curvy lines off each way. And we'll put a curve right here so it looks like the person is wearing a shirt. Now, whatever you want to do here is totally fine. However you want to change the face is okay. Just don't put anything here yet, because that's where we're going to put all of our crazy hair. All right, you guys ready? Let's start by making a straight line. So starting here at the top of his ear, let's go ahead and just put a straight line that comes out like that. Now let's do a line that goes out this way, another straight line. Now let's put a couple of dots that go in a rainbow shape or an implied line over his head. So this creates an implied line. These dots are not touching, but they do make this curved line in your head if you connect them. So starting at any one of those that you want, go ahead and create lines. So my first one, I'm going to do a curvy line. I'm going to go all the way to the edge of my paper. Next one, I'm going to do a broken line. Remember, yours does not have to look like mine. It can look exactly like yours. How about that? Next one I'm going to do is a mixed line. We're going to go up, and then maybe a curve, maybe a straight line again, maybe a curve again, all the way to the top of my paper. Now let's do a sketchy line, where you get to be a little bit more energetic, all the way to the top. Let's do some implied lines. I'm going to do some dashes. I'll even switch it up. Do some X's in a row. Maybe my last one, you can choose whatever you want to do. I'm going to do, I think, a curvy line. I just like those a lot. So if you want, you can keep going. You can keep adding more lines in between if you want. You can draw some stuff inside of it. You can start coloring it if you like. Here's another example where I started coloring mine. So feel free to finish off that project and then send a picture of this to your teacher or to me at nkocina@cacmp.org. I believe your teacher does want to check on these as well, so please send it to her first. And if you do want to send it to me, I would love to see them as well, so you can add me to that email. A line drawing that starts with your name. So I'm gonna start by writing my name nice and clear across the middle of the paper. I'm gonna do nice, clean lines, and I'm not gonna touch any of my lines together. Using straight lines, maybe a couple of curves to do your circle letters. All right, now I've written my name in lines and I've left lots of space. Now starting anywhere you want, but at the end of one of your letters, go ahead and pick one of the lines that we've talked about and draw that line all the way to the end of your paper. So this first one, I'm gonna do a broken line all the way to the edge of my paper. Down here, I'm gonna do a curvy line starting at the end of my A. I'm just gonna go all the way to the edge of the paper. I'm gonna do an implied line coming off of this one. I'm gonna have it go this direction and then go right off the page. Over here, I'm gonna do a sketchy line off the H. Over here, I'm gonna go back to doing broken lines. I like those. Off the O, I can just choose anywhere off the O I wanna go. I'll give it a couple of curvy lines. Off of this guy, let's do another implied line, but this time I'm gonna do try to fill your whole paper in with as many different lines as you can. Here's another example of that. I started another one, and here's another one that I did, and I actually started coloring this one in a little bit. So feel free to make this one your own. And again, please send me copies of it.